I believed I had the perfect marriage. My husband never forgot an anniversary. He never raised his voice. He never gave me a reason to doubt him. Everyone said I was lucky. And honestly, I agreed. Then one ordinary afternoon, while looking for a document in his desk, I found a small black velvet box. Inside was a wedding ring. Not mine. It wasn't an old family heirloom, and it wasn't the ring he wore every day. It was brand new, polished to perfection, and hidden where he thought I'd never look. I expected to uncover an affair. Instead, I discovered a secret that completely changed the way I saw my husband, and our marriage. If you think you know where this story is going, think again. My husband never forgot an anniversary, never raised his voice, and never lied to me. That's why finding a second wedding ring hidden in his desk scared me more than finding another woman would have. Another woman I could work with. Another woman comes with motive, opportunity, a name you can Google. A second wedding ring, hidden in a drawer, wrapped in a sock, my husband's sock, an ordinary gray sock, not even a nice one, comes with nothing but questions and the growing, horrible suspicion that the calm, boring, wonderful life I thought I had was actually a very well-organized crime scene. My name is Claire Whitfield. I am 34 years old, I sell real estate for a living, and I would like the record to show that I am, under normal circumstances, an extremely reasonable person. These were not normal circumstances. It started on a Tuesday, which felt unfair, because nothing life-alteringly weird is supposed to happen on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are for grocery shopping and mild disappointment about the weather. I was looking for a stamp, an actual, physical postage stamp, because apparently my mother-in-law still does not trust the email for birthday cards, and my husband Daniel's desk drawer was the only place in the house where a stamp had ever historically been cited, like Bigfoot, but for adhesive-backed rectangles. I opened the drawer. No stamps. Instead, a small black velvet box, tucked beneath a stack of old receipts, and inside it, a gold wedding band that was absolutely, unmistakably not the one on Daniel's finger. I want to be very clear about something before I go any further. Daniel Whitfield is, and I say this with the weary affection of someone who has been married to a human golden retriever for 9 years, the single most boringly wonderful man alive. He remembers our anniversary a week in advance and starts subtly hinting about restaurant reservations. He has never once raised his voice at me, not even the time I backed his car into a mailbox and then, in a panic, backed it into the same mailbox again. He alphabetizes the spice rack. He cried at our neighbor's dog's birthday party. This is not a man who has a secret. And yet, here I was, standing in our home office at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, holding a gold ring that was not his wedding ring, in a box that was not our jewelry box, hidden in a drawer that was, until 14 seconds ago, exclusively known to me as the Bigfoot stamp location. I did what any reasonable, extremely composed wife would do. I called my best friend Priya and had a complete, undignified meltdown over the phone while standing in my own office, holding evidence, whispering, for no logical reason, since Daniel was at work and could not possibly hear me. Okay, Priya said, once I'd finished explaining, in the calm, clinical tone she reserves for genuine emergencies, the same tone she used when her cat swallowed a hair tie. Okay. Let's think about this like professionals. You're a dental hygienist. I clean 40 mouths a week, Claire, I have seen things. Describe the ring. It's gold. Plain band. There's an engraving inside, I think, but I couldn't read it, my hands were shaking too much. Shaking from what? Rage? Betrayal? Low blood sugar? I don't know. All three. I had a granola bar at lunch, this could genuinely be partially blood sugar. Put the ring back exactly where you found it, Priya said, and meet me at my place in 20 minutes. We're going to figure this out like the professionals we are not. I put the ring back. I did not put it back exactly where I found it, because I am a human being with hands that shake when they discover potential evidence of a secret second marriage, and I definitely left the sock inside out in a way that a forensic sock analyst would find deeply suspicious, but I did my best. Then I drove to Priya's apartment at a speed that several traffic laws would have described as concerning, parked badly, and let myself in with the spare key she keeps under a fake rock so obviously fake that it has, on 3 separate occasions, been stolen by raccoons. Okay, Priya said, opening the door before I even knocked, holding 2 glasses of wine like she'd been standing there preparing for a crisis since I hung up. Tell me everything again, from the top, and this time, skip the parts where you narrate your own feelings and just give me facts. I need facts, Claire. I watch a lot of true crime. I know how this works. You clean 40 mouths a week. And I've absorbed hours of Dateline through my ears while doing it. That counts for something. I sat down on her couch, took a large, undignified gulp of wine, and told her everything, the drawer, the sock, the box, the ring, the horrible spinning sensation in my stomach that had not stopped since 4:47 p.m. Here's what I don't get, Priya said, pacing, wine glass in hand, fully in what I recognized as her true crime documentary reenactment mode. Daniel is, and I say this as someone who has known him for 9 years and once watched him apologize to a Roomba for bumping into it, the least secretive man in North America. This is a man who told you about his surprise 40th birthday party for himself, 3 weeks in advance, because he, quote, didn't want you to worry about planning something. I know. This is a man who, when we played Mafia at game night, immediately confessed to being the murderer within 4 seconds because, quote, the guilt was unbearable, I couldn't do it, I'm so sorry everyone. I know, Priya. So either Daniel has been living an elaborate double life so sophisticated it makes international spies look like amateurs, or, Priya stopped pacing, pointed her wine glass at me with sudden, dramatic conviction, there's a completely reasonable explanation, and we are about to spend the next several days finding it in the most humiliating way possible, because that is simply who we are as people. I would like to say, in hindsight, that Priya's second theory was correct. I would also like to say that the most humiliating way possible turned out to be a wild, sweeping understatement of truly historic proportions. Here is what a normal, well-adjusted wife does when she finds a mysterious second wedding ring in her husband's desk. She asks him about it directly, calmly, over dinner, in a mature and communicative fashion. Here's what I did instead. I bought a pair of sunglasses so large they made me look like a confused insect, borrowed Priya's car because mine has a bumper sticker that says, "Ask me about my open houses," and is therefore, according to Priya, not remotely inconspicuous. Claire, it's the opposite of inconspicuous, it's a mobile billboard, and followed my own husband to work. I feel like this is illegal, I whispered, crouched behind the steering wheel of Priya's Honda, watching Daniel's car idle 3 lights ahead of us in traffic. It is not illegal to drive behind your own husband, Priya said, from the passenger seat, binoculars pressed to her face, binoculars she had, deeply concerningly, already owned before this entire situation began. It is, however, extremely sad, and I want that on the record before we do anything else today. Why do you own binoculars? Birdwatching. Don't judge me, it's very relaxing, unlike this, which is the opposite of relaxing. This is giving me an ulcer and we've been in this car for 11 minutes. Daniel worked as an actuary, a fact I bring up because it is, statistically, the least suspicious profession in existence, a job that is, definitionally, about calculating risk so carefully that no risk is ever taken, by anyone, ever, including apparently the risk of hiding evidence poorly. We followed him into the parking garage of Whitfield and Associates Actuarial Consulting, no relation, a coincidence he brought up on our third date and has never once stopped bringing up since, and watched him walk inside, wave good morning to the security guard, and disappear into an elevator, looking, infuriatingly, exactly like a man with absolutely nothing to hide. "Okay," Priya said, lowering her binoculars. "This is achieving nothing. He's at work." Actuaries do not have affairs during work hours, they're too busy calculating the statistical likelihood of everything going wrong, which, incidentally, they'd know applies to affairs too. So what do? We do what any reasonable investigative team does. Priya pulled out her phone with the grim determination of a woman about to do something she'd clearly been wanting to do since this entire situation started. "We go through his phone bill." "We don't have access to his phone bill." "You're on the family plan, Claire. You have access to everything. This is the 21st century. Surveillance isn't sneaking around in a trench coat anymore, it's logging into a shared account online, like God intended." 20 minutes later, sitting in Priya's parked car outside a Starbucks, both of us hunched over my phone screen like we were defusing a bomb, we found it, a number that appeared 11 times over the past month, all calls lasting between 4 and 12 minutes, none of them saved under a name in Daniel's contacts, which Priya also had access to, because Daniel, bless him, has never changed a single password in his life and uses Daniel W1234 for literally everything, including, we later confirmed with mounting horror, his bank login. "Call it," Priya said. "I can't just call the mystery number, Priya, what if it's a woman?" "That's the point, Claire, that's the entire point of calling it." "What do I even say?" "Say you're doing a survey. Say you're from the electric company. Say, actually, no, give me the phone, I'll do it. I once talked my way out of a parking ticket by pretending to be my own twin sister. I have range." Before I could stop her, Priya had dialed the number, put it on speaker, and set the phone on the dashboard between us like a small, terrifying explosive device. It rang twice. A woman answered. "Fairview Blooms and Events, this is Rachel, how can I help you?" Priya and I looked at each other with the specific, silent horror of two people who have just realized they've stumbled onto something far worse than they expected. "Rachel," I mouthed. "A florist," Priya mouthed back, eyes enormous. "He's calling a florist named Rachel 11 times a month." "Hello?" Rachel said again, understandably confused by the extended silence. "Is anyone there?" I hung up so fast I nearly threw my own phone out the car window. "Okay," Priya said, breathing hard, gripping the steering wheel like it had personally wronged her. "Okay. New theory. Daniel is either having an affair with a florist named Rachel, or," she held up a finger, buying herself time to think, the way she does when she's bluffing during board games, "or he's planning something. Something involving flowers. And rings. And secrecy. An affair involving flowers? People do romantic things for affairs too, Claire, don't be naive, this is exactly the kind of detail true crime documentaries are made of. He seemed like the perfect husband." Little did she know, please stop narrating my life as a true crime documentary. "I can't help it. It's a very strong structure, Claire, it has a clear act too." We sat in silence for a long moment, both of us staring at the Starbucks logo like it held answers. "There's one more thing," I said finally, remembering something I'd been too rattled to mention earlier. When I put the ring box back, there was a piece of paper folded underneath it. I didn't have time to read the whole thing, but I saw a date circled. Next Saturday. Priya's head whipped toward me with the speed of a woman who has just found her second act break. Next Saturday, she repeated slowly. Claire. What's happening next Saturday? I opened my mouth to say nothing, I don't think, just a regular Saturday, and then felt my stomach drop through the floor of Priya's Honda entirely. Our anniversary, I said. 9 years. Next Saturday is our 9th wedding anniversary. Priya set down her binoculars very, very slowly, the way you'd set down a live grenade. Claire, she said. I think your husband might be planning to marry you again. To someone else. At the same time. On your actual anniversary. Which is either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or a genuine legal crisis, and I honestly cannot tell which, and I need you to know that scares me more than anything else that's happened today. We did not, I want to be clear, immediately drive to Fairview Blooms and Events and confront a woman named Rachel about her involvement in my husband's apparent bigamy plot. We waited a full 18 minutes, mostly because Priya insisted we needed a strategy and also because the Starbucks drive-through line was extremely long and neither of us felt equipped to handle a potential marital catastrophe without caffeine. Here's the plan, Priya said, once we were parked outside a small, cheerful storefront with a hand-painted sign and a window display of extremely aggressive tulips. We go in. We pretend to be customers. We ask innocent, probing questions. We do not, under any circumstances, mention the words husband, ring, or bigamy. Why would I say bigamy in a flower shop? You'd be surprised what comes out of a person's mouth under pressure. Claire, I once accidentally told my dentist I loved him instead of you too when he said take care. Panic makes fools of us all. The bell above the door jingled as we walked in, and a woman in her late 20s, wearing a green apron covered in what appeared to be actual, real dirt from actual, real flowers, looked up from a bouquet she was assembling with the easy, unhurried confidence of someone whose life was entirely uncomplicated by mystery husbands. Welcome to Fairview Blooms. I'm Rachel, let me know if you need anything. I felt my entire body go rigid. Priya, beside me, made a small, strangled noise that she quickly disguised as a cough. We're just browsing, I said, in a voice roughly 4 octaves higher than my normal speaking voice. 4 flowers. Which is a normal thing people do. In a flower shop. Rachel blinked, understandably thrown by the intensity of my delivery, but recovered with the professional grace of someone who deals with strange customers on a daily basis. Of course. Anything specific? Anniversary, birthday, apology, why would you assume it's an apology? I said, sharper than intended. It's just one of the options on our website, Rachel said slowly, taking a small step back. We also do weddings. Funerals. The occasional very aggressive breakup bouquet, don't ask. Do you know a man named Daniel Whitfield? Priya blurted, apparently abandoning the entire strategy within 90 seconds of entering the building. Rachel's face did something complicated, a flicker of recognition, quickly smoothed over into professional neutrality, the exact expression of someone who has just realized they might be in trouble and isn't sure why yet. I'm not able to discuss client details, she said carefully. Privacy policy. Are you with him? Is everything okay? I'm his wife, I said, and something in my voice must have carried the full, unhinged weight of the past 4 hours, because Rachel set down her flower shears very slowly, the way you'd set down a weapon in front of someone who might be dangerous. Okay, she said. Okay, I really can't discuss anything without his permission, I'm sorry, But I promise you, whatever you're thinking, and based on your face, I have a guess, it's not that. He's been calling you 11 times a month, Priya said. We have the phone records. You have his phone records? Rachel looked, for the first time, genuinely alarmed, and not on her own behalf. Ma'am, with respect, I plan events for a living, not affairs. 11 calls is barely enough time to finalize a centerpiece order, let alone conduct a secret relationship. I promise you my client meetings are extremely boring, mostly involving whether people want peonies or ranunculus and if their mother-in-law will complain about the seating chart. So what is he planning? I demanded. There's a ring. A second wedding ring. Hidden in his desk. And a date circled, next Saturday, our anniversary. What am I supposed to think? Rachel's carefully professional expression cracked, just slightly, into something that looked suspiciously like she was trying very hard not to smile. Ma'am, she said gently, I genuinely cannot tell you anything. Client confidentiality is basically a religion in the events industry. People would never book us again if we spilled secrets to suspicious spouses in the shop, no offense. But I can tell you this much, because it's already technically public information, I don't do weddings for people who are already married. It's, and I want to stress this, extremely against industry ethics, and also, honestly, kind of illegal, and also I would lose my vendor license, and also, honestly, I really don't want to be involved in whatever legal nightmare you're currently imagining. Then what event are you planning for him? Priya pressed. Rachel looked between the two of us, my wide, panicked eyes, Priya's barely contained investigative glee, and something in her expression softened, the specific look of someone realizing they were watching a beautiful, elaborate surprise get accidentally ruined by its own recipient's detective work. I really can't say, she said. But, and I probably shouldn't be telling you even this much, whatever you're planning to do next, please don't do it before Saturday. Some things are worth waiting for. Even if the waiting is, clearly, driving you a little bit insane. That's not remotely reassuring, I said. It wasn't meant to be reassuring, Rachel said, picking her flower shears back up with the air of a woman ending a conversation. It was meant to buy your husband 4 more days. Now please, I have a wedding centerpiece to finish, and you two are standing directly in my delphiniums. We left Fairview Blooms and Events with considerably less clarity than we'd entered with. 3 complimentary carnations Rachel had pressed into my hands with what I can only describe as pity, and a growing, horrible certainty that whatever was happening on Saturday, it was real, it was imminent, and it involved, somehow, both flowers and a second wedding ring, which is a combination that, statistically speaking, could mean literally anything from romantic surprise to elaborate crime. I need more wine, Priya announced, starting the car. And also, possibly, a lawyer. On standby. Just in case. That night, Daniel came home at his usual time, kissed me hello with his usual amount of enthusiasm, and asked how my day was with the same easy, guileless warmth he's shown me for 9 straight years, and I looked at his open, friendly, completely unguilty face and thought, with the specific despair of a woman losing her mind slowly and in real time, you absolute fraud, you beautiful, terrible fraud. Fine, I said. Normal day. Very normal. Showed a house. Sold nothing. You know. Normal. You seem tense, Daniel said, hanging up his coat, oblivious, always so infuriatingly oblivious. Everything okay? Everything's great. I said, in a voice that convinced absolutely nobody, least of all me. Daniel gave me a slightly concerned look, the exact look he gives our neighbor's anxious rescue dog, and let it go, Because he is, fundamentally, a man who trusts the people he loves, a trait that was currently making me feel like the worst wife in recorded human history for suspecting him of bigamy based on a sock and a florist named Rachel. I made it through dinner. I made it through a rerun of our favorite baking competition show, during which Daniel offered his usual detailed, unsolicited critiques of contestants' lamination technique. I made it all the way to 11:47 p.m., lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel's slow, even, entirely untroubled breathing beside me, before I finally cracked, reached for his phone charging on the nightstand. His passcode is our anniversary date, a fact that under literally any other circumstance I would find sweet, and, with the specific, self-loathing thrill of a woman who knows she's about to do something she'll regret, opened his messages. There, at the top of his conversation list, was a thread with a contact saved simply as R. I opened it with hands that were, once again, shaking, entirely unrelated to blood sugar this time. R, the second ring came in today, exactly like you asked. He's going to lose his mind. Daniel, perfect. Don't let Claire see it under any circumstances. She's already acting suspicious. I think she might know something's up. R. Rachel says the venue's confirmed for Saturday. Everything's on track. Daniel, I still can't believe we're actually doing this. 9 years. Feels insane it's already been this long. R. Feels insane he agreed to it, honestly. Never thought I'd see the day. I set the phone down on the nightstand with the careful, controlled movements of a woman defusing a bomb, and lay very, very still, staring at the ceiling, running the words "he's going to lose his mind" and "never thought I'd see the day" through my brain on a horrible, endless loop. He. Not she. Not a woman. A he. My husband, a man who alphabetizes the spice rack and cried at a dog's birthday party, was apparently planning a secret event for a man, involving a second wedding ring, a confirmed venue, and a florist named Rachel, 4 days before our actual wedding anniversary, and had specifically instructed a mysterious contact named R to make absolutely certain that I, his actual wife, did not find out. I did not sleep that night. I did, however, spend several hours composing an increasingly unhinged group text to Priya, which I sent at 3:14 a.m. and which read, in its entirety, "New development. It's a man. There's a man involved. Call me the second you're awake. Bring wine. It's a work night but I don't care anymore, nothing matters, time is a flat circle." Priya, bless her deeply chaotic soul, called me at 3:16 a.m., already wide awake, already several steps ahead of me, already, as it turned out, Googling "is it legal to marry 2 people at the same time if one of them is also a man," a search history I would later see over her shoulder and which I am fairly confident put both of us on some manner of government watch list. "Okay," she said, voice thick with sleep and adrenaline in equal measure. "Okay, Claire, I need you to breathe, and I need you to consider, calmly, that this might not be what you think it is. He's planning something with a man, Priya, involving a ring, and he specifically said don't let Claire find out. Those are his literal words. I saw them with my own 2 increasingly sleep-deprived eyes, Claire." Priya's voice went suddenly, uncharacteristically serious, the tone she reserves for genuine crises. The tone I'd only heard twice before in 9 years of friendship, once when her cat needed emergency surgery and once when she found out her college boyfriend had gotten married without telling her. "I need you to consider something, and I need you to consider it without panicking, okay? Okay. What if Daniel isn't planning a secret affair with anyone? What if he's planning a surprise party? For your anniversary. Involving your father-in-law, who I remind you is also, technically, in a relationship with a man, his second husband Marcus, whom you have met, multiple times, at multiple holidays, for the past 4 years. There was a very long silence on the line. "Oh my God," I said slowly. "My father-in-law's name starts with our Robert." "Robert Whitfield," Priya confirmed. "Who, if I recall correctly, mentioned at Thanksgiving that he and Marcus never actually had a real wedding, just a courthouse signing, because Robert's first wife, your late mother-in-law, was still finalizing the divorce paperwork at the time and they didn't want to wait, and Marcus has been quietly upset about it for 4 years. And Daniel has absolutely been the kind of son who would spend an entire year secretly planning his father a surprise wedding as an anniversary-adjacent gift. Because Daniel Whitfield is, and I say this as someone increasingly certain we have both lost our minds tonight, the single most sentimental human being either of us has ever met." I lay in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, staring at my husband's sleeping, oblivious, entirely not a bigamist face beside me, and felt something that was equal parts overwhelming relief and profound, bone-deep embarrassment. "Priya," I whispered. "I think we might have spent an entire day surveilling my husband over his father's surprise wedding." "I think," Priya said, "we might also owe a florist named Rachel a very sincere apology, and possibly some money for emotional damages, because we absolutely terrorized that poor woman among her delphiniums." "So who's he in the text? He's going to lose his mind?" "Claire," Priya said, with the patience of a woman explaining something to a golden retriever, who in this scenario has never once in 4 years gotten the wedding he actually wanted, and who would, statistically, lose his absolute mind with joy at getting a surprise one. I closed my eyes, pieces clicking into a shape that suddenly, mortifyingly, made complete and total sense. "Marcus," I said. "Oh my God. Marcus is going to lose his mind." "There it is," Priya said. "Now go to sleep, you unhinged woman, we have a wedding to accidentally not ruin in 4 days." I would love to tell you that this revelation immediately resolved everything, that I slept soundly, woke up refreshed, and greeted Daniel the next morning with the calm, secure confidence of a woman who had never once suspected her husband of secret bigamy. Instead, I spent the following 3 days in a state of low-grade, constant guilt, made significantly worse by the fact that I now had to pretend I hadn't read his private texts, hadn't surveilled his workplace, hadn't interrogated an innocent florist among her delphiniums, and hadn't spent an entire evening quietly convinced my husband was a criminal, all while he continued to be, infuriatingly, completely wonderful. "You've been weird for like 4 days, Daniel said on Thursday night, over a dinner I had cooked with the specific, overcompensating intensity of a woman drowning in guilt. "Is everything okay? Work stuff?" "Everything's totally normal," I said, in the exact tone that had failed to convince him 4 days prior and, predictably, failed again now. Why would anything not be normal? I love normal. Normal is my favorite thing. Daniel set down his fork and looked at me with an expression I recognized instantly, because it was the exact expression he'd worn 9 years ago, on our 3rd date, right before he told me, completely unprompted, entirely too honest for his own good, that he'd already told his mother he thought I was the one after only 2 dates, a confession that should have terrified me and instead, somehow, immediately made me fall in love with him. "Claire," he said gently. "I know something's going on. You've been acting like a woman in a spy movie for almost a week. You flinched when I said the word ring on Tuesday. You did an actual flinch. I saw it happen in real time." I opened my mouth to deny it, looked at his open, patient, deeply unsuspicious face, and felt the entire elaborate structure of my week-long cover story collapse under the weight of 9 years of marriage to a man who had never, not once, been capable of lying to me and had apparently decided, somewhere along the way, that this meant I was equally incapable of lying to him. I found a ring in your desk, I blurted. A second wedding ring. In a sock. I thought you were secretly marrying someone else. I followed you to work. I interrogated a florist. I read your texts at 3 a.m. and thought you were planning bigamy with a man named R, who I have now correctly identified as your father, and I am so sorry, and also slightly still traumatized, and also I would like to formally apologize to Rachel at Fairview Blooms, whose delphiniums I believe I threatened with my energy alone. There was a very long silence. Then Daniel, my husband, the single most emotionally transparent man in the state, put his head down on our kitchen table and started laughing so hard he had to hold on to the edge of it for support, a full, helpless, wheezing laugh that went on for a genuinely alarming length of time, long enough that I started to worry, briefly, that I'd broken him. You thought, he gasped, when he finally caught his breath, wiping actual tears from his eyes, you thought I was secretly marrying my father's boyfriend? When you say it like that it sounds insane. It was insane, Claire, that's an insane thing to think, that's an entire season of a soap opera's worth of insane. You told a mysterious contact say Desert to make sure I didn't find out. What was I supposed to think? That stands for Robert, Claire, my father's name is Robert, I have literally never once hidden that from you. You've called him Robert at every single Thanksgiving for 9 years, I panicked. The context was very misleading. Daniel wiped his eyes again, still grinning, and reached across the table to take my hand, the same easy, warm gesture he's made 1,000 times over 9 years, except this time accompanied by the specific, delighted disbelief of a man who has just discovered his wife spent a week convinced he was a criminal. I've been planning a surprise wedding for Dad and Marcus, he said. For 4 years I've watched Marcus pretend he's fine that they only had a courthouse signing, and I finally saved up enough and got everyone organized to do it properly, real venue, real flowers, real vows, the whole thing, this Saturday, which I know is also our anniversary, which is exactly why I picked it, because I wanted our anniversary to mean something extra this year. And I wanted it to be a surprise for both you and them, which, clearly, backfired spectacularly, because instead you spent a week thinking I was a bigamist. The second ring, I said slowly. In the sock. Is my dad's replacement wedding band, because he lost his original one in the ocean 2 years ago and never told Marcus because he didn't want him to feel bad. And I've been secretly saving up to replace it as part of the surprise. It's in a sock because it felt like the least likely place you'd ever look, which, clearly, was a catastrophic miscalculation on my part. I put my own head down on the table, right next to his, overwhelmed by the specific, dizzying combination of relief, love, and profound personal embarrassment. I threatened a florist, I said, into the tablecloth. I have to live with that now. You threatened Rachel, Daniel confirmed, still grinning. She actually texted me a photo of you too, Claire, with the caption, "Your wife thinks I'm your mistress. This is the best day of my professional life, I'm framing this. I want to disappear into the floor." You can't, Daniel said, squeezing my hand. You have a wedding to help plan in 2 days, and also, considering everything, I think you owe Dad and Marcus the world's most sincere apology gift basket. I would love to say that once the mystery was solved, everything ran smoothly towards Saturday. It did not. What actually happened was that Priya, upon hearing the full story, delivered over an emergency lunch during which she alternated between wheezing with laughter and demanding I repeat the word delphiniums for the 4th time, immediately appointed herself assistant wedding coordinator, a title nobody had given her and which she wore with the fierce, unearned confidence of a woman who had spent 1 single week accidentally investigating a wedding rather than planning one. I have skills, Priya insisted, when Daniel gently suggested that perhaps the professionals had this handled. I have observed skills. I know exactly how weddings work now. I studied this intensely, under duress, for an entire week. You interrogated the florist, Daniel said. And that florist, Priya said, now considers me a friend. Daniel, we have a rapport. I have been personally invited to help with the centerpieces. This is called networking. It turned out, infuriatingly, hilariously, that Rachel had indeed forgiven us, mostly because, in her own words, genuinely nothing this entertaining has happened to me professionally since a groom's ex-girlfriend tried to crash a wedding disguised as a bridesmaid, and honestly, you two brought some much-needed chaos to my week. She'd even offered, half-jokingly, to let Priya help arrange the ceremony arch, an offer Priya accepted with the seriousness of someone being handed nuclear launch codes. Robert and Marcus, for their part, remained blissfully unaware of the entire saga, under the impression they were attending a small anniversary dinner that Daniel had organized for Claire and himself, a lie so thin that Marcus, on Friday, texted the family group chat asking, with mounting suspicion, why he'd been told to bring nice shoes, but not, like, wedding nice, just regular nice, to a dinner that was apparently now requiring a full tuxedo fitting. He's on to us, Daniel reported, reading the text aloud at our kitchen table Friday night, surrounded by seating charts, a box of replacement wedding rings, and 3 separate bouquets Rachel had dropped off for approval, which mostly meant Priya rearranging them dramatically while narrating her choices like a judge on a competitive floral design show. Tell him it's a very fancy dinner, I suggested. I told him that. He responded, and I quote, Daniel, I have known you since you were 7 years old, and you have never once in your life used the word fancy unironically. What is happening? Is your mother coming? I need to know if I should be emotionally prepared. Tell him his own mother-in-law situation is not relevant to this dinner, Priya called from across the room, elbow-deep in a bouquet of peonies she had absolutely no professional business rearranging. I am not texting my father-in-law that his mother-in-law situation is irrelevant, Priya, that sentence doesn't even make sense. It felt powerful when I said it. By Saturday morning, through a combination of Daniel's genuine planning, Rachel's professional competence, and Priya's chaotic, deeply unqualified enthusiasm, everything was, against all reasonable odds, actually ready, a small garden venue decorated in soft golds and greens, exactly 40 chairs for close family and friends, a minister who'd officiated Robert and Marcus's original courthouse signing 4 years ago and had, apparently, been quietly hoping for a redo invitation ever since, and in a small velvet box in Daniel's jacket pocket, a replacement wedding band for a man who had spent 2 years pretending he wasn't secretly heartbroken about losing his first one in the Atlantic Ocean during an ill-advised romantic swim that Marcus still brings up at every family gathering as the day your father tried to drown for love and lost a ring instead. Are you ready? I asked Daniel, adjusting his tie in the small groom's family prep room, both of us dressed for a fancy dinner that Robert and Marcus still, remarkably, believed was real. Are you ready? Daniel asked back, grinning. Last chance to follow me around with binoculars, in case I make a break for a 3rd secret wedding. I hate you. You interrogated a florist for me, Claire. I think that's the most romantic thing anyone's ever done on my behalf, honestly, and I include our actual wedding vows in that comparison. Through the door, we heard Robert's voice, rising with the specific, dawning suspicion of a man who has just walked into a garden full of chairs, flowers, and what appeared to be, in his exact words, an alarming number of Claire's co-workers dressed like they're attending something significantly more formal than dinner. Daniel, Robert's voice carried through the wall, tight with barely contained emotion. Daniel, what is this? What is happening right now? Marcus, do not cry yet, we don't know what this is yet, hold on, too late, came Marcus's voice, already thick with tears. I already know exactly what this is, Robert. Look at the flowers. Nobody arranges peonies like this for a dinner. Daniel looked at me, eyes bright, and squeezed my hand. Showtime, he said. Try not to accuse anyone else of bigamy in the next hour, if you can manage it. No promises, I said. But I'll try. I would like to report that the wedding of Robert Whitfield and Marcus Delgado went off without a single hitch, in the calm, dignified manner befitting a couple who had already been legally married for 4 years and were simply, finally, getting the ceremony they deserved. I would also like to report that this is not, even slightly, what happened, because apparently no event connected to the Whitfield family in the past 9 years has ever occurred without some manner of chaos, and this was, evidently, no exception. The trouble began roughly 90 seconds after Robert and Marcus walked, hand in hand, into the garden and finally, fully understood what was happening, a moment so genuinely moving that I cried before I even meant to, standing beside Daniel in the small crowd of 40 guests, watching 2 men in their 60s hold each other and sob with the specific, overwhelming joy of finally getting something they'd quietly wanted for years. The trouble was that Marcus, mid-embrace, suddenly pulled back, looked at Robert's hand, and said, loud enough for the entire garden to hear, Robert. Robert, where is your ring? You're not wearing your wedding ring. Why aren't you wearing your wedding ring? Is this a joke? Is this a very elaborate joke where you're leaving me at your own surprise wedding? It's in my pocket. Robert said, patting himself down with increasing panic. I have a replacement one. Daniel got me a replacement one. Where did I put my jacket? Who has my jacket? I have your jacket, Daniel called from beside me, holding up the garment in question, which he had apparently taken for safekeeping and then, in the chaos of the morning, completely forgotten to mention to anyone. It's in the pocket. Small velvet box, left side. Robert grabbed the jacket, dug through the pocket with shaking hands, and produced, to the audible relief of the entire garden, the small black velvet box. Except when he opened it, the box was empty. There was a very long, very confused silence, during which Robert stared into the empty box like it had personally betrayed him. Marcus's face cycled rapidly through several stages of grief, and Priya, standing near the back with the wedding coordinator's clipboard she had absolutely appointed herself in charge of, went pale as a sheet. Oh no, Priya said, into the silence, loud enough for the entire garden to hear. Oh no, I think I know what happened. Priya, I said, with the specific dread of a woman who has learned, over the past week, to fear exactly this tone in her best friend's voice. What did you do? I was rearranging the centerpieces this morning. There was a little box on the gift table. I thought it was decorative. I thought it was one of those little prop boxes people put on tables for aesthetic purposes, so I moved it, into the, Priya's eyes went very wide. Into the bouquet. The bridal bouquet. Which is currently, she turned, slowly, in horror, toward the front of the aisle, in Robert's hands. Every head in the garden turned to Robert, who looked down at the bouquet he was holding, the traditional, ceremonial bouquet Daniel had insisted on for the groom who never got one the first time, and, sure enough, nestled deep among the peonies and greenery, glinting in the morning sun, was a small gold wedding band. There was a beat of total, stunned silence. Then Marcus burst out laughing, a huge, undignified, wheezing laugh, the exact same laugh Daniel had produced at our kitchen table 3 days earlier, and within seconds, the entire garden had dissolved into helpless laughter, 40 guests wiping their eyes, the minister doubled over trying to compose himself, Robert holding a bouquet with his own wedding ring hidden inside it like the world's most romantic scavenger hunt, and Priya, mortified and delighted in equal measure, taking a small, theatrical bow. In my defense, Priya announced to the entire garden, once the laughter had died down enough to be heard over, I have had an extremely stressful week involving multiple accusations of bigamy, an interrogated florist, and approximately 6 hours of sleep total since Tuesday, and I think, given all of that, hiding a ring in a bouquet is a very reasonable mistake to make." "She's not wrong," I called out, unable to help myself. "It's been a week." "Claire," Daniel said, laughing, "do not start telling that story right now. We are at a wedding, they're going to hear it eventually." "Hear what story?" Marcus demanded, wiping his eyes. Ring finally retrieved from the bouquet and properly, ceremonially placed on Robert's hand, the entire chaotic detour somehow only making the actual moment sweeter. "Claire. What happened? I want the full story. I want it right now. Before we continue, I have decided this is now part of the ceremony." And so, standing in a garden full of golden light and slightly crushed peonies, in front of 40 guests, a bewildered minister, and 2 properly wed men who insisted, over Daniel's increasingly desperate protests, on hearing every single detail, I told the entire story: the sock, the surveillance, the terrified florist, the 3 a.m. phone call, the phrase "he's going to lose his mind" that had nearly convinced me my husband was a criminal, while Daniel put his face in his hands and groaned through his own laughter, and Priya, thoroughly redeemed by the ring in the bouquet incident, added dramatic narration from the sidelines like a woman finally getting the true crime documentary moment she'd been chasing all week. "So let me get this straight," Marcus said, once I'd finished, wiping actual tears of laughter from his eyes, one arm around his very officially re-wedded husband. "You thought Daniel was secretly marrying someone else on your own anniversary. And instead, he was planning our wedding the entire time." In my defense, I said, the evidence was genuinely very misleading. "The evidence," Robert said, grinning, still holding his slightly crushed ceremonial bouquet like a trophy, "was a sock, Claire. A very suspicious sock." By the time the actual ceremony concluded, rings exchanged, this time without any further hidden in floral arrangements incidents, the sun had shifted low and golden over the garden, and what had started as a secret wedding had somehow, chaotically, become the best anniversary Daniel and I had ever had, despite neither of us technically getting married that day. "I have a confession," Daniel said, finding me near the dessert table later that evening, both of us slightly tipsy on champagne and the specific exhaustion of a week that had contained significantly more detective work than either of us had budgeted for. "Please, no more secrets. I don't think my nervous system can handle another reveal today. It's a small one. I promise." He reached into his jacket pocket, the same jacket, now thoroughly ring-related in my memory forever, and pulled out a second small box, considerably smaller than the ring box, considerably less alarming, thank God. Inside was a simple gold bracelet, engraved on the inside, the way Rachel's earlier delivery slip had apparently promised, with a short inscription I had to tilt toward the fairy lights to read properly. 9 years. 0 affairs. 1 extremely eventful week. I ordered it 3 weeks ago, Daniel said, a little sheepishly. For our actual anniversary. It's why I had Rachel's number saved without a last name, it's why there was a date circled on that paper you found, it's why I was being weird about the desk. I didn't want you finding your own anniversary present early, which, in hindsight, given everything else that got found in that desk, feels like a fairly minor secret compared to what you actually suspected. I laughed, actually laughed, standing in a garden full of fairy lights and leftover wedding cake, holding a bracelet that had apparently caused approximately 30% of my recent nervous breakdown despite being, in fact, the least suspicious object in the entire story. So the entire time, I said slowly, there wasn't even one secret. There were 2. And they were both wholesome. And I still managed to accuse you of bigamy. To be fair, Daniel said, sliding the bracelet onto my wrist, you also accused Rachel of being my mistress, threatened her delphiniums, and got Priya so invested she nearly ruined my father's wedding by hiding a ring in a bouquet. So really, this week produced far more chaos than either of my actual secrets warranted. In my defense, you keep saying in my defense, Daniel said, grinning, pulling me close under the string lights, and I would genuinely love to hear the rest of that sentence, because I don't think there's a version of it that actually holds up in court. In my defense, I said, I love you an unreasonable amount, and apparently that translates, under pressure, into becoming a deeply incompetent amateur detective within about 4 hours of finding a suspicious sock. That, Daniel said, kissing my forehead, might be the most romantic thing you've ever said to me, and I include our actual wedding vows in that comparison. Across the garden, Priya was showing Rachel something on her phone. Almost certainly, I would later confirm with dawning horror, photos from our surveillance day, the two of us hunched behind Priya's steering wheel with sunglasses too large for either of our faces, while Robert and Marcus danced their first dance as a properly, ceremonially married couple to a song Marcus had apparently been requesting for 4 straight years, and somewhere above us, the last of the sunset burned gold through the trees, over a garden that had, against every reasonable expectation, held not one wedding but essentially 2, the one Robert and Marcus had always deserved, and the strange, chaotic, deeply loving 9-year one Daniel and I had somehow, through sheer accidental momentum, ended up renewing right alongside them. A year later, on our 10th anniversary, I opened Daniel's desk drawer looking for a stamp. My mother-in-law, now permanently at peace with 2 happily married sons-in-law and 1 increasingly suspicious daughter-in-law, still refuses to trust the email, and found, sitting directly on top, in plain view, no sock required, a small note in Daniel's handwriting. Nothing suspicious in here this year. I promise. Check twice if you want. Love you. D. Beneath it, admittedly, was a small gift-wrapped box, which I stared at for a long, suspicious moment before calling Priya, out of sheer 9-year-old habit, fully prepared to launch a new investigation. She answered on the first ring, as though she'd been waiting. Absolutely not, Priya said, before I'd even said hello. Whatever it is, Claire, I refuse. I have a dental hygiene license to protect. We are never doing surveillance again. I already had to personally apologize to Rachel's delphiniums with an actual gift basket last year. I am not doing round 2. I haven't even told you what I found yet. I don't care. My answer is no. Open the box like a normal, well-adjusted wife, and if it turns out to be something insane, you're allowed exactly 1 hysterical phone call, and then we're both required by law to laugh about it within the hour, given our extremely well-documented track record. I opened the box. Inside, thankfully, unremarkably, wonderfully, was a plain gold bracelet charm shaped like a tiny sock, which I stared at for several seconds before bursting into the exact kind of helpless, wheezing laughter that had become, somewhere over the past year, the unofficial soundtrack of our entire marriage. He got me a sock charm, I told Priya, wiping my eyes. A literal tiny gold sock. As a joke. About the sock. That man, Priya said, with the fondness of someone who had, against all odds, become close friends with both my husband and his father-in-law's florist over the course of 1 deeply unhinged week, has never once told you a lie in 10 years of marriage, and the one time you thought he was hiding something, it turned out to be a wedding so wholesome it made 40 adults cry in a garden. I genuinely don't know what to do with a marriage that boring, Claire. I'm almost disappointed. There's no book deal in this. There's absolutely a book deal in this, I said, looking at the tiny gold sock spinning gently on its chain, thinking of the garden, the bouquet, the empty velvet box, the frantic 3 a.m. phone call, the horrified florist among her delphiniums, and the single, ridiculous, perfect Tuesday that had started it all. We just have to call it fiction. Nobody's going to believe a word of it otherwise. Some secrets are meant to protect the people we love, while others have the power to change everything. What would you have done if you found that second wedding ring? Would you confront your partner immediately, or would you search for the truth first? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this original story filled with mystery, emotion, and unexpected twists, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.